This video is sponsored by Inspiration Station. Spice up any room in your home or office with these creative and unique digital prints for you and your loved ones. Choose from a variety of different designs with new additions being added frequently. Each piece of art has its own unique style and purpose, including motivational quotes, paintings, and more. These prices are insanely low, too. Click the link in the description to check out the store and share it with your friends and family too, as there is something for everyone. Now, let's get to the video. Harrison Ford's swan song playing the legendary Indiana Jones has arrived in theaters now with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the fifth and final time that Harrison will don the whip and the hat and play the legendary treasure hunter, archaeologist, and teacher. This is my review for the movie. This is going to be a non-spoiler review. So I'm not going to go into the spoilers here. And I will tell you this. There's a lot of things in this movie that I do not want to spoil because I went into this not knowing anything about the plot. Just the very, very basic sort of like the year and stuff like that where it takes place. But I'm not going to go into that here because I'm going to assume most of you are probably in the same boat. You're wondering, should I see it? What are the pros and cons? And I'll go over all of that today. So this is the first Indiana Jones film that is not directed by Steven Spielberg and not written by George Lucas. George Lucas, of course, was the original creative mind behind Indiana Jones, who created the series based on his the old serials he used to watch as a kid, which also led to the creation of Star Wars. But like they've proven in the past, Lucasfilm does not need George Lucas. At least they don't think they need George Lucas. The fans certainly do, but they don't think they need him. So they instead hired a number of different writers, Jez and John Henry Butterworth, David Coep, and James Mangold himself obviously had some writing credits here, and it's directed by James Mangold. Now, you have to understand, Steven Spielberg is a legendary filmmaker, but James Mangold has a damn good resume himself. You know, this is the guy who did Copland, 3:10 to Yuma, Walk the Line, Logan, Ford versus Ferrari. I mean, the guy's got a lot of really good movies under his belt. This is, of course, his first and maybe last Indiana Jones film. Now, this movie's been getting a lot of negativity. There's been a lot of critics who have been shitting on this movie. And I think that your enjoyment of this film is going to depend on what you're looking for. The first thing I'm going to say is that I did enjoy this movie more than Crystal Skull. I definitely like this one a bit more. I thought that this one was a bit more focused, and I thought that this one was more engaging. That the thing about this movie is, at no point during this film was I bored or was I not invested in the story. The movie does a pretty good job of being an interesting story and putting Indiana Jones in a very interesting spot. He's older now. He's almost retired. I mean, he's in the retirement years, and his life has changed quite a bit since even the previous movie. And we go over all of that in the early parts of the film. We find things out about what happened to Indy early in the movie. It's not straight up told to us. You have to pick up some of it through context clues, but his life has changed a lot. And a lot of that is sort of him coming to terms with his own mortality and him going out on one more adventure. Even though he's reluctant, he's going out on one more adventure to try to, in this case, literally save the world, which the other movies kind of had that too, because of an ancient artifact of the past. It's not the same sort of thematic elements to it. Now, a lot of people's criticism of Crystal Skull wasn't just the refrigerator scene, but that one got a lot of hate. And I'm telling you now, this movie does have a couple of scenes that are, let's just say, you have to suspend your disbelief. There's a couple scenes like that. Now, I don't think there's any scene in this movie that is anywhere near as egregious as that scene. Like, I don't think anything here even really gets close to that. But there's a couple that are kind of borderline. There's a couple of scenes where something happens and it's sort of like, okay, how did he survive that? One of those types of situations. Also, I was hearing that the de-aging tech was not good in this movie, that it was noticeable. And I don't know, I saw this movie in Dolby and I did not, I mean, I obviously knew it was de-aging because Harrison Ford's older now, but I thought it was actually very well done. I don't know if the critics got an early unfinished version of the film. I don't know, but the version I saw, the de-aging was actually pretty good. The only thing is that you can tell that the performance from Harrison Ford, he's older and he's more tired. Like the energy that we saw Harrison Ford give out in the first three movies, he doesn't have that anymore. And I think even as an actor, he can pull out some really good emotional scenes. He's not a bad actor, but like that youthful energy that he had in the first three films when he actually was young, it's a bit absent here, even though there are a couple of scenes where it comes back. A lot of that was obviously helped by stunt people and CG and stuff like that. He's a great actor. It's just that you can tell that even the de-aging scenes where he's younger, he doesn't have as much energy. But again, the movie filmmaking can kind of cover that. It's just more so in the way he talks and his dialogue and whatnot. Now, he's joined in this movie by Phoebe Walker-Bridge as Helena Shaw. And it's interesting because the ironic thing about this character is that she's the Harrison Ford Han Solo of this movie. She is literally what Han Solo was in A New Hope. She is into ancient relics and things like that, just like Indy is, but she's in it for the money. She wants to get this stuff and sell it. And obviously she has a character arc in the film that changes that. So she goes through a very similar story beat than Harrison Ford Han Solo in the first Star Wars movie from 1977, A New Hope. So it's interesting that in this situation, Harrison is not playing Han Solo, but he's playing somebody very similar to Han Solo. Now, I will say this. There were some interesting mirrors between this and Force Awakens, not just because this was a big reunion movie with an older actor, but also because it's literally him with a younger woman with a British accent, which is exactly what Rey was, Daisy Ridley in Force Awakens. But at least with this movie, I feel like they treated the Indiana Jones lore. I'm going to be real with you. I think Lucasfilm respected the Indiana Jones lore a lot more than they did for Star Wars. Obviously, Star Wars is a much, much, much bigger property, and there's much more room for error there. But this movie did not do anything that was in any way offensive to the previous four movies. So that's one good thing to look forward to. This movie will not, quote unquote, ruin your childhood. Don't expect that here. It's just sort of like an epilogue, like it's his like last big adventure. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there's a few things in this movie that are a bit off the ground. The first three movies, despite having some really over-the-top sequences, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, at the end with the Ark of the Covenant opening and the spirits coming out, and, Temple of Doom has the voodoo. All these movies have this whole realistic fantasy aspect to them, right? This one has that too, and the issue with this one is that there's some paradoxes here. If you're looking for an Indiana Jones film to be 100% historically accurate, you're just not going to get that. And honestly, you're a fool for even thinking that, because the other movies were not 100% historically accurate. It's just based on real events, but it's not real. It's never meant to be a true story. It's meant to be an adventure story that happens to have elements of the real world in it. Nazis, and if the fourth movie had, the Russians, and these are things that existed in our world, but they're used in the fictional world here. So there are things that you have to, there's a lot of moments in the movie where you have to suspend your disbelief. So if you have a problem with that, you might not like it. You might not like it because this does make you suspend your disbelief more than the first three films. And you have to really believe a lot of things and try to understand a lot of things that there might be concepts that might not be up your alley, because there's some nerdy concepts in this film, especially with what the Dial of Destiny actually is and what it does. But I do like what they did with it, mostly because I'm a fan of these types of like movies. Like there's some science fiction in this. Not like UFOs in the previous one, but there's some, it's a different aspect of science fiction. Don't want to spoil it, but it really does sort of go down that rabbit hole. And if you're not into science fiction stories, you might get thrown off by that. Now, that being said, I did enjoy the movie. It's not one that I'm going to rush back to go see, and I'm not going to give it a thumbs down at all. I did like this movie. I enjoyed it. I do want to also throw in that Mads Mikkelsen, I want to talk about him for a minute. He plays the lead villain of the film, And I like what they did with his character. I liked his motivation a lot, actually. It was a really creative idea. The movie takes place in the 60s, so World War II is long behind us, but some people just aren't ready to let that go yet. And he's one of those guys. And of course, that drives him, that motivates him to get on with his quest to find the Dial of Destiny. Also, Antonio Banderas was Ronaldo. I didn't even notice it was him. I did not even notice it was him. And he was he wasn't a major part of the movie, but he was there in the middle of the film, and he was important for a couple of scenes here and there. Besides that, you do have another child actor in this movie, like what they did with Temple of Doom, and that's Ethan Isadore as Teddy Kumar. And he's not as annoying as Short Round is. Indy, but he does things that are a tiny bit not believable in this movie. And again, you have to suspend your disbelief to a degree. It really all comes down to how much you're willing to suspend your disbelief. Are you looking for another exciting Indiana Jones story and some cool plot elements and a decent villain? You're going to get that here. You're going to get that here. And Mads Mikkelsen, I should actually talk a little bit more about him. I did like him as a villain, although it sort of reminded me a lot of, like, you know, the lead villains from Raiders. There's a lot of, you can tell he kind of studied these movies and kind of try to mimic those actors. But I mean, that's a good throwback. And I should also state too that John Williams really helped this movie. This is my favorite John Williams soundtrack since The Force Awakens, which no matter what you might think about that movie, that soundtrack is great. Rey's theme, Kylo Ren's theme, the Resistance themes, the Snoke theme. These are all great themes that I really enjoyed. Even to this day, I like those themes. Here he's back and he's great and he really helps. If he was not composing this movie, I'm not saying that others couldn't do it, but once again, he proves why he is the greatest film composer of all time. I mean, he just proves it again. I felt the movie did have a satisfying ending and a satisfying farewell for the Indiana Jones character. It's some pretty emotional stuff. Honestly, it was very well executed, and you have character arcs. I mentioned not just his character arc, but other characters that I'm not going to go into. So that part of it was well done. Overall, I think James Mangold did a good job with what he was given. Like I mentioned before, there's some unrealistic things here, but again, every indie film has a degree of that. Not as grounded as the first three films, but not as bombastic and over the top as the fourth one. It was a nice, healthy balance, I think. They were kind of skirting the edge a bit, but personally, I liked the movie. Again, it's not a movie that I'm going to go see again tomorrow, but I left the movie theater happy that Harrison Ford was able to play this character again, because he does really care about this character more than even Han Solo. I think he definitely loves this character, and there were some old faces from the older movies that come back, which I don't want to spoil for you. Stay away from Wikipedia and other things, because you will get spoiled. I mean, it's going to happen. There are some surprises, I'm just going to say that. And satisfying ones, though. Satisfying ones. The action sequences were also good, too. They were definitely a step up from, you know, the previous movie. I think that we live in a time now where using practical effects again is, you know, kind of become the cool thing to do. But also, CGI has improved so much since the 2008 film that you're not going to get those wonky CGI moments like you did in that one. You're not going to get those here. Like I said, the de-aging tech was actually not bad. I don't get the criticism. It wasn't that distracting. And I get it, because you know he's subconsciously, you know he's really like old. You know that, right? But I thought the scene itself worked great. It was actually the opening scene of the movie, and I really enjoyed what they did with that. So, fun movie. Not the best movie of the summer. That's probably going to Spider-Verse, and I doubt anyone's going to be able to fuck with it, if you want me to be real with you. But this is still one that if you're a fan of the first three movies, even if you didn't like the fourth one, you should probably check this one out at least once, because I think you'll enjoy what they do. Anyways, take care, y'all. I'll do a spoiler review very soon, and I'll go over the actual logic holes and my criticisms with it in that one. So I look forward to talking to you then.